Hi, Martin here. Today my wife and I are going on a short canoe camping trip. And we were in this area a few days ago, just exploring it, hoping to find a suitable location to camp. And we did. And so today we thought we would show you how we decide on a good, suitable location for camping and how we go about preparing responsibly a crownland bush site. So we're heading down a stretch of river that runs roughly east-west at the moment. And we want to make sure that whatever site we choose gets good sun exposure. It should be east or south-facing. It should definitely not be north-facing. And here's why. Right now it's about 10:30 in the morning, and over on my left over here, it's 10:30, and if you look at the shore, there's no sun there. So even if there's a good, nice rocky point on which to camp, there's no morning sun. It's going to feel wet and damp, and it's just going to be buggy. And so it's going to be an unpleasant sight. By contrast, the opposite shore, that's the north shore, but it's south-facing. That whole shore is bathed in eastern and southern sunlight. So it's going to get sun in the morning and throughout most of the day. So any site that we expect to find, ideally, will be on that north shore. So what we're looking for on that shore is a place where we could easily land our canoe. That is, some kind of gradual slope. It could be beachy and sandy or gravelly, it could be rocky, it could be dirt, it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's not too steep a vertical bank. We want to avoid a vertical bank where we can't beach the canoe. We want easy access to the water for a number of reasons. First, so that it's easy to get in and out of the canoe, so it's easy to load and unload the canoe. But more importantly, so that there's easy access to water. You don't want a campsite that's 30 feet above the water level and you have to go up and down a very, very steep bank several times a day just to fetch water. And you also want a good bathing area. You want an area that's not too weedy, it's not too shallow, and where you don't have to dive off a big rock the very first time to see what the water is like, how deep it is. So that's what we're looking for. Some kind of point that juts out, that has a nice gradual grade into the water. So we're paddling close to the north shore, since the site that we're going to be looking for will ideally be south-facing. And as you can see, there's plenty of sunshine here. So in one sense, this is all great, but there's no good landing place for your canoe. No beachy area. It's all very, very steep grade, and it continues for 20, 30, 40, 50 feet up. I mean, it's okay if you land your canoe in one spot and you have to walk up 10 or 20 feet to get to a flat spot. But if there's no flat spot in sight, then that means a lot of walking back and forth just to get water. So you can camp under those conditions, it's just more work. So I would just as soon keep paddling until I find something that satisfies more of the criteria that we're looking for. So this bank is still very steep, but just ahead here is an area where the land gently slopes down to the water's edge. And the shoreline is gravelly and sandy, not a steep bank of tangled trees. Right in front here, I could land a canoe easily. It's not too high to get up to that clearing up top. The water right down here at the shore is clear and weed-free. And this point here is really kind of beautiful because it sticks out into the water. And like any point that sticks out into the water, it's going to get sunlight and breeze from multiple directions. So now this is actually a west-facing point right now. So this site is going to get sunlight from the east, the south, and the west. And this area is weedy, but again, the land slopes down here. So this we thought was a very promising location. Promising because the grade was nice, it was easy to land our boat, it was a place to swim, it would be easy to get water, and it was on a point, so it would get sunlight all day long and would catch a breeze, and during bug season, that's really valuable. And we've just landed. Well, that was a pretty ideal spot for landing the canoe and unloading it. There's a lovely bay back there that's probably going to be great for fishing. We're facing west over here, so when the sun sets, this point is going to get sun there. Walking to the south, and that beachy, gravelly area goes around so as to catch eastern morning sun. So this whole point is lit up all day, and because it's a point sticking out, it will catch breeze from multiple directions. And this area here is almost weed-free, and it's fairly deep, so this should be a good swimming area. Perfect. So as is common along grassy shorelines, there's often a game trail that runs parallel to the water line, which is what this is, right under that tree right there, back to my boat. And we followed this the first time we came here, and we found that the game trail continued through this little tunnel of vegetation, and it went up that hill, which indicated to us that this is actually going to be a kind of path of least resistance to get in and out of the bush from the shore. So chances are, if there's going to be an area of openness that's easy to travel through, it will be up there along this trail. All right, so it opens up, and that's what we need, is some open area where we can spread out tarps and lay down tents and enjoy some sunshine, catch a breeze. And if you look over here, you'll see how high we are off the water, actually. We're a good 20 feet off the water. And there's actually a little game trail here, a very, very steep one, actually. Some small animal or animals have been going up and down here under that log, all the way down to the water's edge. But the way we came up was nice and gradual and made for easy water access. So this is a beautiful area, beautiful view, open and sunny. It's going to catch some breeze from multiple directions. Just walking through the blueberry bushes here and ferns. And this is what a crownland bush site looks like before you do some clearing. So now what I'm looking for is a place where I could string a tarp and a potential place to put a tent or string hammocks. There are some standing dead trees there. I don't want to be too close to those. So I think our campsite is going to be located just over here. So this spot here is nice and open. It's surrounded by living trees, and I think this will make a suitable living area. There's some blowdown. There's an old fallen birch here that we'll have to clear out. The ferns don't need to be uprooted or cut or anything like that. They'll just get flattened down just from setting up the tarp, and this will be a good area to just relax in, to cook and eat in if we want. And what I especially like about this, apart from the fact that it's open and somewhat sheltered by some trees, is that it's a local high spot. There's no local depression here. There isn't higher land all around where water would drain and pool. And that's what you want for a tent site, and that's what you want for your tarp setup. Your tarp is where you live, the tent is where you sleep. So we need two areas. And this, I think, will be a good sort of kitchen living area under the tarp. So I didn't want to leave our food bag down in the boat unattended for too long. And another thing that we need to find is a place where we can hang our food bag. We didn't bring bear canisters or food barrels that would be hard to get into. So this is just an ordinary dry bag. It's not at all critter proof, so we need to find a place where we can hang it from a limb. Perfect. Okay, so we're in another open clearing here. We're quite far from our campsite now. Maybe 200-300 feet away. And there's a big old tree here, and it's overhanging and nothing beneath it. So I can hang my food bag up there, and it'll be well off the ground and well away from the tree, and nothing will be able to get to it from there. So that's just about perfect. And judging from how open this is, I'm guessing that this area was once logged and is starting to reestablish itself. But this looks like a very unnatural open clearing in what is otherwise pretty dense bush. Oh, that was lucky. That's good. Our tarp area is going to be over there. It's closer to the water. Our tent location, I think, will be here. This is fairly clear, so there isn't much clearing to do. I don't want to have to cut down trees or anything like that, or saplings or anything, unless I absolutely have to. There's not a lot of blowdown. There's one dead tree here that I can clear out, but otherwise, that's not a lot of work because this area is already fairly flat and level. Flat and level is what you're looking for, along with a local elevation. You want it to be higher, not depressed relative to local lay of the land. So water in a rainfall is not going to pool or puddle here. So this, I think, is just about ideal. And it's not very big, of course, but it doesn't need to be. Your tent is your doghouse. It's where you're going to sleep. You're not going to be living in it. You're going to be living in the more open, breezy area over there. So this is perfect. This is all we need. Very little to clear here. Now it's time to go get the rest of the gear out of the canoe because we know where everything is going to go. I have my PFD here and start establishing a trail, a nice easy trail from here back to the boat. And that just consists of clearing obstacles along the way. So back at the shore, I'm about to unload the boat and then bring it all up to our site and bring the boat up there as well. And I've been clearing the path of trip obstacles and impaling hazards because the last thing I want is to fall while carrying the boat or a pack and impale myself on something like this. So I'm going to portage my boat up to the camp. It's not far, and the trail is getting cleared. I could portage it over this thing, but that's dicey. I'd rather just push the boat around. I could also cut this, but I want to aim for as close to the leave no trace ethic as possible. I want to not mar the environment. So I'm going to leave that there. And then bring the boat up. I'm glad I got those trip hazards out of the way. Okay, now that all the gear is up here, it's time to take a break, have something to drink, and set up the tarp. One thing I want to mention though is, in keeping with the leave no trace ideal, it's not something you can actually actualize, but it is an ideal to strive for. I don't want to have a site which when I leave it is completely impacted and beaten down. So whenever I go from my tarp down to the water's edge, I'm going to walk along the same path. It's going to create a trail by crushing some of the vegetation, but I'm not going to crush the vegetation all around. The same thing goes for the route from my tarp to my tent, from my tent out to my food bag. I'm going to try to always take the same route so that the impact I'm having is minimal. All right. So just filtered some water before we go up and finish off the camp. I haven't mentioned anything about where we're going to cook and where we might build a fire. Ordinarily I would build a fire down by the shore. There's a fire ban in effect though right now because it's been unusually hot and dry this summer. And so we're going to be cooking on a stove up near our shelter. If I was making a fire though, I wouldn't make it up there, I would make it near the shore. I would find a place that was like this. This is nice and sandy. So if I can't find bare exposed rock, a nice sandy area like this where there's no major roots or wood around and close to water. Close to water for two reasons. You need to douse your fire when you're done using it, and if you're too far from the water, you're not going to feel like doing it. You're going to be tempted to just let it burn out, which is a mistake. You want to douse your fire thoroughly. And also you want to be close to water because when you're cooking, you want to be able to get to the water that you're going to need to boil and cook with. So this would be a pretty ideal spot, even though my campsite is up that hill. So this is where we're going to be setting up our tarp, our main living area. And there's a fallen birch bark right in the middle of it, so we want to clear that away. I brought along a small camping axe and a saw for this kind of thing, but I think this is actually rotten enough, funky enough, that I'm not going to need it. All right. So this is the underside of our tarp, which is also our bug shelter. This is the Eureka Harrowing VCS. So what I like to do is I like to set it up, and then once it's set up and I know what it looks like inside, I know what vegetation I might need to trim back, if any. Now a lot of this stuff is just, you know, grass and ferns and things like that. I don't need to worry about. I don't need to cut that down. But for instance, this little maple here, that I'm going to cut. And things like that. I'm also going to look for sticks and twigs and things like that that I can throw out of here. I set it up this way so that I don't clear a big area around it. I just want to have a minimal footprint. This here is going to be my living space when I'm under my shelter. So I don't need to clear all the way around it. I just need to clear inside of it. So that's what I'm going to do. So, this is the finished product. This is the inside of the shelter after it's been cleared. There's lots of vegetation left. There's lots of clintonia and grasses, some young ferns and things like that. What we took out was anything that was pokey and woody and stemmy. So pieces of wood, woody plants that are growing vertically, like little maple saplings and things like that. So we just pulled all of those out, and we just threw them out of the shelter. And just to reveal a nice flat, clean surface that we can lounge around in and spread out our air mattresses if we want. We could sleep here if we wanted to. We wouldn't even need a tent. Yeah, so this is it. We've damaged as little of the environment as possible by limiting our living space to this little pad. So the tarp and bug shelter are up. Now we're going to set up our tent pad. So this is a fallen tree, looks like an old hardwood, possibly an oak. Too heavy to lift, not punky enough to just break up into pieces. So I'm just going to use my axe and chop through it. And I don't want to sustain an axe injury, so I'm not going to take any big axe swings. I'm going to get on my knees and chop from here. Okay. Okay. Don't want to be going all the way through into the dirt there. This axe. Let's see if I can. There it goes. All right. All right. So with the big obstacle out of the way, I'm just pulling out all these little plants that are sticking up. And if I can't pull it up, I'm going to have to take my knife and cut that well enough below grade that it won't poke through in the knife. There we go. The tent is up after having cleared the tent pad, and if you look around the tent, you'll notice that there isn't a lot of area cleared around the tent. Just enough for us to put the fly on and adjust the fly. Nothing more than that. Heading over to our living area under our tarp shelter, there's a path that's been established. We did not clear this path. Because we had to go back and forth several times, a path got naturally made. We didn't have to clear it. And that's why we're so particular when we're setting up a bush site on Crown land, not to tramp around all over the place, because we didn't clear a single thing. We didn't cut a certain a thing here, but this is being worn into a path. Your entire site will look like that if you just wander off in any old direction, if you don't choose paths from one place to another. So there's a path from the shore to the shelter to the tent to our food bag. And somewhere along the way, along that path, I'm going to establish a latrine. So I encourage people to camp on Crown land and to create bush sites like this. If you don't create them like this, they will end up looking like the campsites that you find in provincial parks. If you go to a provincial park like Algonquin, for instance, the sites are beautiful, but they are really, really beaten down. It's all just bare dirt and maybe some pine needles. There's no vegetation. It's all exposed root and rock, and it's because everyone is just walking willy-nilly. So and that's why there are rules in parks why you can't establish a new site. It's because eventually it will not look like this. It will end up looking like those beaten down sites. So I encourage people to create their own bush sites when they go on Crown land if there isn't an established site nearby. But do so responsibly. If you think in terms of the leave no trace ideal and you strive for minimizing the impact, your site, once you're gone, will rebound very, very quickly, and no one will even be able to tell that you were ever there shortly thereafter. Hi, honey. I'm home. Look, I have a baby. Actually, what I have is a big pile of sand. So, because we can't have a fire pit because there's a fire ban, and we want to use a stove, we still want to make sure that if our stove were to get knocked over, it wouldn't set everything afire because we're not right on the shore. We're going to have plenty of water on hand to douse anything if anything did catch, but we want to take some elementary precautions. So what we did was we cleared away all of the ground litter and surface debris here, but there's still a fair bit of duff here, which in principle could ignite. So we went down to the beach with our sit pads. These sit pads are just cheap Reflectex that we use to sit on, and we got a bunch of sand. And we'll spread this out here, and we'll do this a couple more times, and we will be able to set our little stove on that, so that if ever the stove did topple over and there was some kind of fuel spill or something like that, there's simply nothing to ignite, and nothing is going to be flammable in our cooking area. Okay, and another load of sand. Now, this is of course not required at all. People use camping stoves quite responsibly and legally under their tarps, because when it rains you can't be doing it on a beach or something like that, so you have to have some place to cook, and the inside of a tent is not a safe place. So this is surplus to requirements, of course, but there is a fire ban in effect, and it has been very dry, although we did have rain a few nights ago. I just don't want to take any chances. So, unlike camping in a provincial park where there's going to be a facility for you to go to the toilet, there'll be either a public washroom, there'll be an outhouse, or a thunderbox, or something like that. When you're camping on Crown land, there's not going to be any kind of latrine. You need to make your own. In an earlier video, I went into some detail on how to make what I call a cheek spreader latrine, which is a very simple latrine that's very effective and very, very comfortable. And what you need are two long poles of about this high that will support your weight. So a tree like this, a hardwood maple like this, or even a solid spruce would work. If you find some fallen deadwood, that's terrific. If there isn't, you'll have to cut something down. So these two would be perfect here. The problem is, I don't want to cut these two trees down. They're going to survive. They're in an open clearing, and I don't want to cut them down. So what I'm looking for are two trees that I can cut down that are going to be overgrown, that they are in the shadow of a larger tree and are unlikely to survive. So that's what I'm looking for right now, unless I can find some standing deadwood or some fallen deadwood that hasn't rotted and gone punky. So lucky find, 2 standing dead trees of sufficient thickness and solidity that I can use them without sacrificing a live tree. And these died because, well, they're in the shadow of bigger trees, so nature did it for me. So I've got 2 long pieces and 1 shorter, smaller piece. That's all I need to build my cheek spreader latrine. Now I need to find a location to set it up, which I found earlier over there. All right, this is what I'm looking for. A log, a rock, anything that's raised up off the ground. It doesn't need to be anywhere near this high. And then I'm simply going to lay out my poles in a kind of tripod. Across them at the bottom, they're going to rest at the top, and I'm going to sit right here like this. And you just angle it accordingly. And this is a very comfortable way to use a latrine. Your weight is supported. In fact, I can lift my feet. Perfectly comfortable, perfectly stable. I don't want it to slip or spread apart though on me. So I'm going to put this cross piece here, and I'm just going to tie it up at the bottom and tie it up there with some shock cord. So my latrine making kit consists of 3 lengths of shock cord, and I'm just doing a simple lashing. Really nothing more elaborate than an overhand knot, which I go overhand again and again and again and again. Tighten that, and the friction will hold that and prevent these things from falling apart. And I'll just do that there, and I can adjust this however I want until it's perfectly comfortable. That's it. That's my latrine done. Nice and far from camp, so that even if someone comes this way to take the bear bag down, I won't be seen or heard, and they won't see or hear me. And that's just the way you want. You want some privacy when you set up your latrine. How is it?
Amazing! Woo! Beautiful.
It's a beautiful sunny morning, and the sun is just burning the mist away off the river. So you'll have seen from the still photos at the end how much impact we had on that site despite our best efforts to minimize our ecological footprint. And that was just 2 people in 24 hours. Now, if we were to stay a week, the damage and impact would be only negligibly greater than what you saw. And that's because nearly all of the damage you do initially when you're being responsible, when you're establishing your tent pads and your living locales and your paths to and fro. So that's why it's important to strive for the leave no trace ideal, even though, strictly speaking, you can't leave no trace. A lot of people camp in campgrounds and provincial and state parks think that they're leaving no trace, but that's because usually they're camping in sites or along trails where the traces have already been left, and they're simply leaving no additional traces, which is all to the good. This is what you should do. But when you're camping on Crown land, in areas where others have not camped before you, or at least not camped there recently, it's up to you to leave as few traces as possible. Okay, I hope that this was helpful and informative to you, and I hope you'll seek out some Crown land yourself for you and your family, and have a wonderful time out there. Happy camping.